Well, we got the lake house before Justin, when he was born.
Well, Justin was interesting because there wasn't anything he wouldn't try. Anytime he found something new and innovative, he'd just jump on it and start to do it. And I'll never forget, he'd talk to his friends about it, and they were like, you know, show me how to do this, show me how to do this. And he's like, I'm going to show you this one time.
We were always kind of pushing each other to try new things, so I always wanted to do all the things that he did on the water. He was always so much better than everybody else.
But I think all of our best memories growing up are around water or at the lake. There's this one house called the Jump House. It was not our dock, but we would go and jump off these people's dock.
A beat-up, stand-up jet ski that my dad rigged into working. He would drive and I would just hold on to him on the back.
Between those sports, I remember I was having some pain in my left leg.
Towards the end of the year, the school year was almost over. My mom calls me and tells me that Justin has broken his leg playing football in the yard with a bunch of 14-year-olds.
We got out of the car and then I ran because I saw the football was up in the air and I caught it and I was immediately tackled. All of a sudden, I just felt this really, really sharp pain in my left leg and I'm looking down at it as I'm falling and I realized that it is just like bending in the middle of my thigh.
I just remember getting out of the car and running over to him, and I cannot handle anything that's medical. I saw his leg and like one part was over here and the other part's over here, and I was like, oh.
It wasn't until the next morning that they did surgery and they went through and fixed the break. They saw that there was a tumor, but they didn't know it was a tumor. They thought it was a cyst that had broken. They said it's very common in adolescent boys for a cyst to develop in a bone.
After he had broken his leg, I had an accident. I fell off a bike, so I was couch bound for a few weeks too. We were kind of handicapped together for a little while.
I guess it was towards the end of the summer when he said, you know, it still hurts. They did x-rays and it wasn't healing quite the way it's supposed to, and that's when they found out that, you know, we need to look into this a little further.
We got the biopsy back and he told me that I did in fact have a malignant cancerous tumor in my left leg. That's when everything kind of came crashing down.
It was intense. It was weeks, 6 weeks in the hospital of chemo.
It was really scary because I didn't understand why things weren't going well and like how severe it was, because I mean my parents would tell me, but I don't think they really told me everything.
Every stay was a full week when they did it, and they had this terribly intense chemo regime, and it wasn't an osteosarcoma. The other surprise was that it was a very rare form of cancer that Dr. Foster hadn't even seen.
We didn't know a lot about cancer. I mean, you know what everybody knows, and everybody thinks the first thing is, oh my gosh, he might die.
You know, I really was in shock. I knew something was up because his leg didn't seem to be healing like it should have been, but I had no idea it was cancer.
The plan changed a lot. The surgery was to replace the hip, femur, and knee with titanium implants. Midway through the surgery, they started noticing some complications.
13 weeks in the hospital, not 5 days. We watched the seasons go by. He had no feeling from the knee down. He couldn't move his knee or his ankle or his foot. So we had major problems that had occurred after all of this. So
I think it was hard on the family, and it was obviously hard on Justin. I mean, you have to put on the good face, and Justin was, you know, he had a good attitude about it, so that made it a lot easier. And all of his friends were, you know, very positive, and they'd come to visit him, and that helped a lot. You deal the cards that you have, and you play a hand that you hold, and you know, like I said, our biggest concern was for Justin. to make sure that he didn't feel like he'd been, just dropped out on the sidewalk somewhere.
I was afraid for him because I didn't know how it would impact his life.
Well, when my dad would get home from work, he would take me and we would go get Chinese food every night. And then we would go to MCV and we would just kind of go in his room, watch a movie, watch TV.
He was still limping around with a straight leg, still dealing with physical therapy, trying to get things to move.
And even though we had bad times and it all happened really quickly and it was rough, he actually he stayed really positive through most of it, and he kept most of us positive.
So after a year and a half though, I started getting sore in my muscles, or what I thought were my muscles of my hip.
This kind of came really all of a sudden. Justin had to have known about this.
But it was almost obvious at this point. There was a huge lump.
The best thing was to amputate his leg from the hip down because it just didn't look like it was getting any better. We were going in the wrong direction. And so that was a tough day.
So, back to losing hair, back to the hospital and all that. But if Justin hadn't gone through the first time around, I think this would have been worse for him.
Here's the bone, here's the tumor, and here's where we have to cut. And here happened to be basically my entire hip. James, he was almost more angry than I was about the whole thing.
When he told me that, the first thing I said was, "Oh man, it's going to be great, you're going to be fine. After this, it's all over." After that conversation, I was really upset the rest of that night.
I remember going to in the after surgery room. I just remember feeling fine. I was definitely a little sore. That was like a weight off my shoulders, almost off my body, I should say. I felt kind of oddly lucky. I had seen what everything had been for. It was all paying off, sort of, in a weird way, because I was getting my strength back, getting healthier and healthier by the day, feeling better and better.
His class was really supportive, and they actually nominated him to speak at his graduation.
I truly feel I am one of the lucky ones, not only to be here today, but to have experienced the support I've had through the last 4 years.
So we built a lot of different things for him to try. We started with plastic pipe, that kind of stuff, and it didn't last very long, and he got very frustrated. It would break all the time, and so...
It's funny because my dad loves projects, so once he got it in his head, oh, we can do this, and we'll put this on there, and then...
So they designed the board, and then he just started getting better and better at it. But it's exhausting work because you only have the one arm and the one leg.
Yeah, so he got his confidence back. He wanted to go and try a competition just for fun. I'm just gonna go, see what happens. He couldn't do all the tricks that everyone else could do. He couldn't do flips, and he couldn't do grabs, and he couldn't do release moves, but everyone thought he was awesome.
He definitely said, and he said he couldn't do it for so long, so he knew there had to be a change.
Right now, his current prosthetic is a computerized knee called a C-leg. The hip joint is it's an Autobach hip joint. It has the ability to flex. It's spring-loaded, so it helps advance the leg forward.
We're talking about the leg and getting a prosthetic that he can use in the water.
There comes a time for everyone, I think, when they want to see if everything that they've been involved in and everybody that they've met along the way has all been leading up to something, has all been worth it for some reason. And I think that for right now, for me, that's about to happen when we finally achieve the goal of getting this wakeboarding prosthetic and seeing what I can actually do with it now that we've come this far, because we can't turn back now. I think that everybody has different obstacles that they're trying to figure out how to deal with or get around, and obviously mine are maybe more visual, but everybody's got that. That's something that is standing in their way, and I think that this is similar to anyone's journey where they're just trying to get past it and, you know, show everybody what they're made of. I think that everyone needs that moment where they have stood up to whatever it is that they're facing.
It just amazes me that he's been able to make these kind of accomplishments, and he's quite an inspiration to anybody, because, you know, people complain about this, that, and the other, and then they see Justin, it's like, you know, what do I got to complain about? You know, this guy didn't give up, didn't throw in the towel, and look what he's doing. You know, he's back on his wakeboard, he's enjoying himself, and that's what it's all about.